I am your host, Adesoji Iginla. With me is my esteemed panel. I have ladies first. I have Fubara Eneli, Esquire, author Kwanzaa A Celebration, host Rethinking Freedom, co-host Women and Resistance, and also co-host Griot and Books. Welcome, sister.
Well, thank you. Is the streaming attached? It's saying it's not.
It should be. Let me see. Go on. Says location. Let me hold on.
It is.
It is?
Yes.
Yeah,
You're
okay.
live.
Okay. So that's it. The gentleman needs no introduction. He is comrade in chief. Comrade Milton Allimadi is the host of Black Star News, WBAI 99.5 FM, New York, author of Manufacturing Hate. And dare I say, a new book is about to come out, which in some guys he will tell us about sooner or later. Comrade, welcome.
Asante sana. Thank you, comrades.
Yes, and as it's become custom around here, let's do news from where you're at. I mean, there is only one news, but then, sister, tell us what's happening in your neck of the woods.
Well, we got some breakdown about the primary elections that just took place in Texas. And in some other states, primary elections are just gearing up. So please go out and vote. But I think as we discussed, Jasmine Crockett narrowly was defeated by James Tallarico in the Senate race, U.S. Senate race. And we found out that primarily that would be because the Latino Americans chose to go more heavily for James Tallarico. And so although Jasmine had fought valiantly against ICE, had fought valiantly against Trump and his immigration policies that have created a lot of hurt for the Latino community, that proximity to whiteness continues to rear its ugly head. And not saying that James Tallarico is not a better candidate than anybody that the Republicans have on their ticket. But Jasmine certainly had my vote, certainly is the more experienced of the two Democratic candidates that were on the ticket, should be the one that is the representative for the Democrats on the November ballot, and she is not. And so again, we see, going back to the words of Malcolm X, the Black woman being the most disrespected person on the face of the earth, even though we do the work. And now we're being called upon to make sure that we come out and vote and put James Tallarico in the U.S. Senate, because they know, the Democrats know, they cannot get a person in that office without the Black vote and without the Black woman's vote. Nonetheless, the Latinos, not all of them, but a significant portion of them chose to go with the white candidate as opposed to the Black female candidate, hearkening back to Kamala Harris, many other times before.
Comrade?
Yes, okay. So to me, what was interesting this week was the release roundup of the 3 missing memos by the Department of Justice.
Yes.
In the Epstein case. The FBI had interviewed an accuser 4 times, but only one of the materials from the interviews had been released. 3 very conspicuously missing. The initial explanation is that they thought it was duplicate. Utter nonsense, okay? Which of course raises more red flags. It means this is going to be something that is going to bring much difficulty to President Trump and give him incentive to prolong this Epstein-Netanyahu war on Iran. But on that front as well, there's a lot of pressure coming from the Gulf states because the Gulf states are very vulnerable, as you know.
Yeah.
They survive on oil and tourism. And they have very vulnerable infrastructure, like the water, all of the, essentially about 70% of the water in Saudi Arabia, for example, comes from desalination, right?
Yeah.
And those are potential targets as well for Iran. So I think there's a door there when you have the Iranian president so-called apologizing and saying they're no longer going to hit those Gulf states. And then you have the two other members of the three-member interim presidential council that is running the country right now, saying, no, we are not going to stop attacking. So the impression is that, oh, the president spoke on his own volition. That's not possible in a country like Iran. They're all on the same page, meaning that so-called misplaced apology was strategic and planned for reasons to open a potential opening to negotiate and to end this war sooner rather than later. Because you have Trump already jumping on it saying, oh, we won. Iran is surrendering. It's saying it's no longer going to attack those Gulf states. So when I read that, I said, okay, this seems to me like a coordinated scheme.
Okay, so to tag on to the Iran question, the United Kingdom has basically said, well, we're not getting involved, but yet you can still use our facilities for your quote unquote, how did he target? Okay, so the Prime Minister defensive duties, and somebody asked in Parliament, how is it that a weapon can be used in it defeats the very purpose of the descriptor? So that said, I want to use this opportunity to also wish the Ghanaians happy 69th anniversary. And while they were celebrating in Lebanon, the Israeli Prime Minister in Ghana, Rory Gilad, had asked for Ghana to help Israel defend Israel against Iran. As they were still mulling over that idea, the Israeli military then bombed the UN compound, and guess who was there? Ghanaians, peacekeepers, celebrating the 69th anniversary. So let's just say that request is dead on arrival. No pun intended. But that's it.
So, Comrade, I have a quick question, and you may know or you may not know the answer to this.
Go on.
But I don't know much about the NATO, protocols. I know that if a NATO member is attacked by a non-NATO member, the other members are obligated to come to its defense.
Yeah.
But it seems like if a NATO member attacks another country, like the U.S. attacking Iran on behalf of Israel, it appears that NATO members are not obligated to join that war. Is that the case?
Yeah, that's the case. That's the case.
Okay.
And that's one of the reasons why Spain has declined the use of its facilities.
Understood.
So basically it's like, no, you're on your own. Sorry.
Okay.
So that said, let's go to Ghana for our first story, which comes from Radio France International, and it's that Ghana has decided to take the matter of the acknowledgement of the slave trade to the United Nations. And the story reads, Ghana seeks formal UN acknowledgement of African trade slave injustice. It says Ghana will submit a resolution to the United Nations General Assembly in March to designate the African slave trade as the most serious crime against humanity, Ghanaian President John Dramani Mahama announced on Sunday during the African Union Summit in Ethiopia. Judging from the fact that it's a very emotive subject, obviously it's got its historical antecedents in capitalism and what have you. How do you think this resolution would be received in the United Nations? Comrade.
All right. So I suspect that most of the countries that were formerly colonized will support it. And I suspect that, and I don't know how the protocols work, could the resolution be blocked by a member of the Security Council? And is a member of the Security Council willing, the United States, for example, or Britain, or even France, to take that move and look to the eyes of the world as the country that is blocking the acknowledgement of the history of enslavement and its consequences? So that's question number one. I suppose they could block the resolution. Or is it something that can just be passed by the General Assembly? And it's important because obviously what Ghana is doing is creating another major international platform where the issue of reparations can be discussed. It's asking for an acknowledgement. It's not really, I believe, asking for an official apology. And in fact, the UN would not be in a position, I guess, to issue an official apology on behalf of the UN, because it is some of the individual member countries that were responsible for the enslavement and the consequences of enslavement. But to me, I think it's great because, as I said, it elevates the issue of reparations. He does not stress the issue of reparations because he knows that would make it much more difficult to get the resolution approved. That's why he's not talking about it. But the article then mentions the previous president, Ado, who actually did mention the issue of reparations. So I like how he's delinking it from the true agenda. And the true agenda is to open the door so we can be discussing the issue of reparations at a major forum such as the United Nations.
Sister, your take, your thoughts.
Well, I am glad that Ghana is, as the first African country to gain its independence. We know Ethiopia never had to go through that process, but to gain their independence, I'm glad that they are leading the way, charting this course, if you will. It's going to be interesting how it proceeds. Definitely, we understand that the UN General Assembly cannot impose binding reparations on anyone. And if we look at reparations for instance, the survivors of the Jewish Holocaust, that did not come from the UN, that came through bilateral conversations that were domestic, and between Germany and also
the Allied powers,
organizations that were representing the Jewish survivors, as well as Israel, if you will. But we do know that the UN can set global norms. They can create institutions. They can help shape political conditions that can eventually make reparations legitimate and perhaps even inevitable. And so the pathway is first recognition, and then creating a framework, and then implementation, and then hopefully institutionalization. And so first, it will be submitting and hopefully securing an adoption of this resolution, designating the transatlantic slave trade, and I hate that we even call it a trade, but as the most serious crime against humanity. Of course, as Comrade has said, they're going to need to get co-sponsorship from hopefully all the African nations, some nations, perhaps the G77 and other sympathetic states. These would be the states that were not necessarily involved. I think that they're going to have to stress that recognition is not division, that it's about moral clarity, and also stress that this transatlantic slave trade was foundational to modern inequality. As I'm speaking, I'm hearing, though, the words of, I'm hearing John Henry Clark in my ear, because I'm hearing him say, why are the Arabs getting a pass? why are we talking about the Arab slave trade as well? Because they should be part of this, because to a large degree, they opened the doors and then the Europeans walked in as well. But I would say we start with this resolution. Perhaps they continue with an annual UN Remembrance Day for victims of slavery and colonialism, mandating some global educational initiatives. Perhaps they go into a comprehensive study that is sanctioned by the UN Secretary General. And this recognition would require continuity, not just a single vote, but this would bring some expertise, some accountability. It also requires it would bring that global visibility. Like, it's not something that can be swept under the rug, but understanding that education is critical to preventing historical erasure, one, but it's also critical to ensuring that it doesn't occur again. And given the speech that we discussed a couple of weeks ago, that this little man, little in stature and mind and heart, Rubio gave in Munich, these guys are not at all opposed to recolonizing Africa and anywhere else that they can, as we see from what they're doing in Iran right now, and the decimation, the killing of over 160 girls, for which there has been no apology. And so looking at the fact that reparatory justice is consistent with international human rights law, and the UN has already recognized the rights to remedy for wrongful harm, which should extend to the principle of historical crime. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but this is a good first step. And there's going to be a lot of behind the scenes work that has to be done. And we know that there's going to be a lot of opposition to this, but they can model this after the Iraq-Kuwait UN Compensation Commission, right? Where they documented historical harms. They can begin to quantify what the damages and economic impacts have been. They can start to look at what the calculation methods would be, and maybe even facilitate negotiations between states, even though it would not be the UN, imposing any of this on the particular states involved. But I think it's a good first step, but it is only a first step. There's going to be a lot of work that has to be done. But the African nations, the CARICOM nations, are definitely going to have to hold firm on this.
And co-sign, Okay. Any final thoughts, comrade?
Yeah, it's like the two-state solution, Israel and Palestine. It's been on the books for a long time. It's not been implemented yet, but the fact that it is a UN-adopted resolution makes it significant, and eventually there will be a two-state solution. So we could see this in a similar light. It's something that may not have immediate practical impact, but in the future, in a world where Africa has become much more cohesive and stronger as they take control of their resources, then it would be something that could start getting implemented down the line.
Okay. Speaking of being having a cohesive voice, there is currently the chatter that the African Union, vis-a-vis Ghana and Kenya, are seeking to bring thousands who apparently have been misled into fighting for Russia in Ukraine. And this story comes from The Economist. It reads, thousands of Africans are fighting for Russia in Ukraine. African governments are belatedly trying to stop them. And I'll just read the first paragraph. Slowly, half-heartedly, the soldiers start to dance. A tall man speaking Russian, who appears to be their commander, laughs and calls for the music to be turned up, urging the rest of the group to dance with him. Victor Odhiambo, a 28-year-old Kenyan, who shot a video of the scene on his phone, said this was the day before his army unit on the front line in eastern Ukraine in July. Mr. Odhiambo said all the soldiers seen dancing in the videos were soon to be killed in battle. Apart from the commander, all were African. Mr. Odhiambo is one of thousands who have fought in the war in Ukraine, where both sides have used foreign fighters since Vladimir Putin launched the full-scale invasion in 2022. At first, when I read the story, I didn't even know what to make of it, other than the fact that you have Africans fighting European wars again. Reminds me of World War I, World War II. And I could even see an off-ramp, to use the occupant in the White House famous phrase, for Africans in this cause. I'm like, what do we even get of it? Comrade, your thoughts?
Okay, so obviously, this is another indication of, first of all, the irony, right?
Yeah.
That now you have African mercenaries, fighting European wars. And in the 1960s, you had European mercenaries
fighting African wars
to try to sustain neo-colonial regimes, such as Mobutu and Shombe and Kasavubu in the Congo. They call them soldiers of fortune back in the day.
Yeah,
I think there was a notorious one, Bob Bernard, Irish or
Conrad O'Hare.
Right,
yeah,
exactly. Called
Mad
Mike, they call him, right?
The Mad Dog.
Right. So now you have the reverse. Whoever believed that in the 21st century, given the history, the Soviet Union, the once mighty Soviet Union, who was the one that was actually providing arms for revolutionary movements and guerrilla armies on the continent in Africa. Yeah. And now you have African soldiers fighting on behalf of the former Soviet Union, which of course is a shell of its past self, right?
Correct.
That's number one. Number two, it shows you once again the failure of African governments to deliver. These folks are fighting without being familiar with the issues at all, but all the fighting is because they are hoping for income. They're hoping for income. Is the sort of situation comparable to Africans that are going to the Middle Eastern countries right now as domestic employees. I hate to use the word servants. I never use that. No human being can be designated as a servant to other human beings, but as domestic employees, knowing full well that many of them are abused, many are tortured physically, sexually, and many are even killed. And yet you still have thousands coming there from Africa to work in the Middle East because of a sense of desperation that they have no other alternative source of employment in their countries. As I keep reminding us and our viewers and listeners, when Africans drown in the Mediterranean just to make it to Europe, to work in toilets, in kitchens, in those farms in southern Italy, it gives you an indication of how dire the economic condition in their own countries are. So this is just one example of that desperation, looking for income, willing to go there to be thrown on the front lines as cannon fodder, because that's exactly what happens. They're not only do they do it with the Africans, but they do it to North Koreans who also sent to fight on behalf of Russia against Ukraine.
Sister.
Okay. So first, when I read this article, I was moved to tears because the image that flashed before my eyes was that of enslaved Africans shackled on a ship, being brought out on a deck and being told to dance as a way of getting their exercise and as a way of entertaining their enslavers during the transatlantic slave trade, during Ama-Afa. And so for this article to start with the music and they were told to dance, and that they were Africans being told to dance. And I'm reminded of, you know, the version that comes to mind is the Bonnie M version. Some of you may remember that group, By the Rivers of Babylon, where we first
met.
Yep.
And there we were, and they're singing, right? But just all the times, and for those of us who know the history of African Americans on the continent, of being told to entertain the enslavers. And we are again in 2026. And then he says, the young man being interviewed, and most of those Africans who were dancing, who were being made to dance, were then put at the front lines of the war, and most of them are dead. We have covered on this show stories of Africans who died fighting, and families not knowing where their loved ones were for decades, fighting in these European wars. Nothing paid, and not even knowing where their loved ones were or that they died. And then when they finally find out decades later, can we get the bodies back? Are there any reparations? And here we are again in 2026, history repeating itself. And then to find out the deception under which these young men are being entrapped, are being quote unquote recruited, being told one thing, and because of the destitution in Africa, because of the desperation, people going anywhere looking for a way to make a livelihood. And then once they're in a place, being told, oh, you have to pay this amount of money, and if you can't pay it,
you're in bondage.
You're in bondage. And then you're thinking, okay, well, then I can fight for my freedom. And did not African Americans also go to war to fight for their freedom here in the United States of America, only to come back from war and still face Jim Crow, and still face the Red Summer, and still be denied any benefits? Did not Africans fight in World War I and II and still be denied benefits, be denied their wages? And when they tried to ask for them, they got massacred. Yeah, you know, and it's like, when does this end? And so when does it end? It ends when we as African people rise up and say enough. And so I am glad to see that the story goes on to say that African countries, because it starts with our governments, right? That you cannot just come and recruit from our places, and we have no idea what's going on. Whether it's with the orphanages, when we were allowing people to just walk in and quote unquote adopt our children, and we have no idea where our children are or what they're doing with them. And now it's our young men. And now it's the quote unquote domestic servants, all because on the richest continent in the world, we have not created a governance system to provide for our own. And so we keep our people so vulnerable to the parasites of the world. We've got to do better. But raising these issues so that everyday Black people, everyday people of African descent know about it and can raise the issues with their elected officials, can raise the issues with people in these countries and say, hey, no, don't believe everything that you see, is really important. So thank you for bringing this this article up as one that we discussed today. Thank you.
Comrade?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's totally the failure of African governments. And you know me, I am a staunch advocate of removing a government that does not reflect the values of Thomas Sankara, does not belong in any African country. Any government that does not reflect the values of the Alliance of Sahel States does not belong running any African country. All of these things link back to the failure of our governments. Many of these governments, in fact, their officials who benefit, regardless of what they say, they benefit from sending these young men as cannon fodder. They get a cut of some of the money that is paid. In fact, in some cases, they withhold the money that is meant for this cannon fodder. In fact, every issue, I would say at least 90% of what we discuss on your show shows the need for us to be very merciless in denouncing the African governments that allow this type of exploitation.
Okay, thank you. So speaking to exploitation, let's go to Congo. The story comes from the AP, the Associated Press, and it reads, a mine collapsed at a major coltan mining site in eastern Congo, left at least 200 dead, according to a Congolese authority. A number disputed by the rebel group that controls the mine. Key phrase there, rebel group that controls the mine. The collapse took place Tuesday at Rubaya mines, which are controlled by the M23 rebel. Congo Ministry of Mines said in a statement on Wednesday, it was the latest such tragedy in the mineral-rich and rebel-controlled territory of the country. But a senior M23 official, Fanny Kaj, disputed the figures, saying that the collapse was caused by bombings, in inverted commas, and only 5 people had died. One last part. During the Rwandan-backed M23 group, including whose recent resurgence has escalated the conflict, worsening an already acute humanitarian crisis. So that said, my first question would be, so is the M23 acknowledging the fact that they're controlling the mines? Because I was reading it. That's why I highlighted that part. I'm like, okay, so what are you saying? I thought you were not there. And all of a sudden now, you are acknowledging the fact that you do control the mines. So take it any way you want to go.
I don't know, because, you answered your own question. You pose a question with an answer in itself. Yeah, of course. I think you have another related story that actually reveals a lot more, but I'll wait till we get to that one. Okay. For this one, I can just add that what you pointed out, this is a confirmation and acknowledgement that indeed this, not so much M23, I call them what it is, Rwanda's army, is acknowledging that it controls this specific mine. And of course, it's a tragedy in the sense that, once again, our young people, young men, women also work in some of these mines, transporting as porters, carrying the material once it's dug out of the ground, have no protections. And this is not the first time. We've heard I think we did one in the past where a slide.
Just last month.
Last month. Look, see? This is another form of cannon fodder, you see? And this one, of course, there are 2 issues. Not only this domestic, this is really domestic form of terrorism by fellow Africans against Africans, right? And then, of course, the other half of it is this: the resources would be completely useless if it was not being purchased by multinational companies.
Correct.
And of course, it's easy to trace. Okay, so when the Rwanda soldiers who control this mine, according to the article, earn almost $1 million per month from plundering the resources. How much do you think the multinational company overseas is earning? Probably a multiple of 20 to 50 times. And it can easily be traced to where these resources are going. So that part is not mentioned, as you notice, in the article, when it could easily be done. So because you have another important story on this issue, I won't add so much to it apart from this.
You save your fire. Okay. Sister. the human angle.
I'm ready for some happy stories. You have any happy stories for us?
But your sister, in a way, we are negotiating a path toward happiness by tearing down
that perspective. Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Because yes, we cannot bury our heads in the sand. You're absolutely correct. So first and foremost, Rwanda is playing in our faces. And it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting how this works out with when we talk about the next story, how this works out with their conflict with the US. But going back to this particular tragedy, I wish it was an anomaly. It is not. Not just in the Congo, but across the African continent.
Yes. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Ghana included.
Yes.
Yeah.
Most of our industries have little to no safety,
health and safety,
measures in place.
Yep.
We do not have the infrastructure to address any health issues. Of course, we are not paying people any kind of livable wage. When people are injured, we're talking about the dead. We're not talking about the injured. We're not talking about the ones who are maimed. We're not talking about the ones who are disabled and will never be able to work again and how they're going to survive. The ones who are the primary providers for their families. And so this is an issue that goes beyond just this particular mine. Even though we talk about a mine that is providing, what do they say, 15%
of the world's consumption.
The world's, yes. And yet there's no infrastructure in place for these miners. And if you pan out a little bit further, you will find out that whole area, there's probably no hospital, that you probably don't have a decent educational system, so that these people are just there helping to extract minerals that the rest of the world, right now, as they're bombing Iran and bombing all over the Middle East, those planes, the drones, all of that are using material from this mine, but the people in that area have absolutely nothing to show for it. So first of all, recognizing that these debts are systemic and they're cumulative, that there are thousands, not just in the Congo, but across Africa that are dying in this way. That the armed groups controlling these mines mirror, again, the historical legacy of forced extraction that goes back, again, hundreds of years, and that ties into even the Arab slave trade and the transatlantic slave trade that we just talked about.
Correct.
The whole reason that they came in there and have stayed and have brought the Maxim gun and everything else that they brought in, it's been to extract. And our bodies are expendable just as they're expendable in this Russia-Ukraine war. And that although this peace accord is supposed to improve geopolitical stability, there are no regulations to fix the mining dangers because, again, no humans involved. And so when we're talking about true Pan-African security, it is going to require African ownership of these mineral value chains, and it's going to require us to put safety measures in place where we, and not rebels or foreign companies, control extraction, control regulation, control processing, and control the entire regions actually benefiting from the minerals from their areas. So this is a broader conversation.
Yeah, and you mentioned the issue of disasters like this being the norm, not the exception. It reminds me of the one that happened in, what's it called, in Ghana, where miners basically emptied mercury into a river. In Zambia, it was the case that a company, the case is still being litigated at the moment, basically just spew dust into the atmosphere so much that people developed respiratory diseases. And in Nigeria as well, the case was also with your part of the country where companies have been extracting oil for God knows how long, and yet don't maintain their pipes. And when it spills over, we know the environmental disaster that emanates from that. So you begin to see all of this, and it adds up. We're talking about losing Africans on the battlefield. You're losing Africans in the Mediterranean. You're losing Africans at home. It's like, when do we wake up?
Well, Nkrumah told you. Kwame Nkrumah warned you in neocolonialism, the last stage of imperialism. He predicted everything that we are discussing today and in the last many, many months. For anybody who has not yet read that book, go on Amazon and get that book. Neocolonialism, the last stage of imperialism. He discussed this systemically. Every chapter, the consequences of us not controlling our resources. But then there's a broader issue as well. It's not so much just having, correct leaders. Ideology is also very important. So long as we still operate under the neoliberal global regime, it doesn't matter who the individuals are. We have to really change the ideology. We have to change the philosophy. And that's why you respect, when you look back at people like Julius Nyerere, we're saying it can't be only about capital, right? He was asked a question about, how do you define development? He said development cannot just be building tall buildings in Tanzania.
Shiny buildings.
Right? When we are not emphasizing the basic needs of human beings: food, health, shelter, education, and decent housing. And of course, as you know, all of these countries are now subjected to World Bank and IMF conditionalities. And those conditions are completely the opposite of what you want to deliver for your people. In order to get a loan, they say, lay off teachers, lay off healthcare workers, remove subsidies from healthcare, from food, from transportation. In other words, they're asking you to commit suicide. That's the world in which we operate. And that's why it's so bad. How can we change the leverage? We can change the leverage by saying, you will only access our resources on the prices that we want. And only 3 countries are trying to do that right now: the Alliance of the Sahel States. And that's why I keep bringing them up again and again, hoping that more African countries adopt that same approach. Otherwise, next week and the week to follow, and every other week, we could replay our conversation again and again and again. But I don't mind, because that's part of teaching our people. We have to replay it again and again and again until they start doing the right thing.
Help them understand.
Yeah.
We're about to reach our final story. For our listeners, if this is your first time here, do like, share, subscribe. We're hoping to get to 2,000. We're a couple of numbers short. So it will help also if you share, which means lots of people get to see what the good.
So before we get to the last story, I just want to add one other comment on what the sister said.
Yeah.
In terms of, in fact, the ones that die are only a very small percentage of the calamity. Because the ones who live with the cancer are the ones that are never recorded And I guarantee you more of them subsequently die of the toxins and the cancer. Yes. They don't even have face masks. Think about that. They don't even have face masks.
And think about the birth defects.
Think about that.
Think about yes, all the other health implications.
The deaths, I submit, is a very small percentage of the calamity. Yeah.
The living dead.
There you go.
Wow. So yeah, we started a bit early today because of the time change in the Eastern board. So do check your clocks. In fact, hit the notification button. So once we go live, you get the notification that we've gone live. That will help. So yes, which brings us to the final story. Again, it's related to Rwanda and the Congo, but it emanates from the United States. And the story comes from the Financial Times, the money paper. It says, U.S. hits Rwandan army with sanctions for violating DR Congo peace deal. Donald Trump breaks with 3 decades of ties between Washington and Kigali over conflict in mineral-rich region. The U.S. has imposed sanctions on the Rwandan Defense Force and 4 of its top commanders for blatant violations of peace accord negotiated by Washington between Rwanda and the neighboring Democratic Republic of Congo last year. The decision adds the RDF to the Treasury of Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC marks Washington's clearest break with Rwanda in 3 decades. How would you sum these developments? Comrade.
Okay. So this is potentially a seismic shift. A couple of months ago, when this thing was just, first of all, I think it was in December, right? When they announced the deal.
The deal, yeah.
I said, if the Congolese are clever, they will use this deal and the breathing space it might create to build up their capacity to resist Rwanda, so that even by the time of the end of Trump's term, by that time, they would have totally changed the structure of the military, the capacity, the training, and the weapons in the military. And I said, if they're able to do that, then they could actually gain something from this arrangement. So this just reinforces that point I was making. Because as I said, the Trump administration, the US, they don't care about the lives of Africans. They don't care about the lives of the Congolese, but they care about the resources. And in order to exploit the resources, they can't do it if Rwanda is waging war on Eastern Congo through its proxy, M23. And that seems to have to be the conclusion that the Trump administration has also reached. They want some level of peace and tranquility in the region so that they can extract the resources. And Congo can piggyback by using that time and potential breathing space to really build up its capacity. Because even if Rwanda withdraws, which it seems to have given them, the US has given them an ultimatum.
Yeah.
I think there's one part of the article where the Treasury Secretary is saying they want to see the total withdrawal of Rwanda's army. And it's very difficult to see how Rwanda can defy an ultimatum like that. A couple of weeks ago, one of the commanders and the spokesperson of M23 was killed by a drone operated by the US mercenary. What's his name? Prince?
Blackwater.
The former Blackwater.
Yeah.
And there was no immediate retaliation to that major literal assassination by Rwanda. So Rwanda is under tremendous pressure right now. And it could also have some impact domestically in Rwanda as well. Because it would then mean that Rwanda would have to start addressing some of the internal contradictions that it has and perhaps relax some of the authoritarianism that has prevailed since 1994 when the RPF came into power. So those are my observations from this article.
Wow. Before Sister goes, I mean, you raised something very, very poignant there, and which is something that is also playing out in the Middle East, which is once the current status quo of power is challenged and it doesn't have any breathing room to go or to negotiate, and it capitulates, the domino effect within the internal polity itself is what we're seeing. What might play out in Rwanda is also likely play out in the Middle East. So, Sister.
Well, that is one of the things that why the U.S., at least under the Democratic administration, had been a bit cautious, because Rwanda always played that card. Be careful, don't put too much pressure on us, otherwise domestically things could implode again, and we could have a 1994 genocide all over again. But that argument and logic is not working effectively against a Trump administration whose number one priority is
money.
Not preventing a potential genocide domestically, but access to the resources. And that's the difference.
Sister.
Kagame should be very concerned.
Yes.
And I say every person that I'm aware of who has been an asset, CIA asset, an asset to these foreign governments.
Yeah.
When they are done with you, you are expendable.
Yes. Absolutely. No matter who you are. Absolutely. I agree with you 100%.
When they are done with you,
you are gone.
They will tar you and they will get rid of you. And so it seems like he's kind of been losing a little bit of his protection lately. And Trump's regime in particular is as ruthless as they get. And so Trump in under 14 months has already bombed 8 countries.
Yeah,
would not be surprised. I mean, hey, why stop at 8? 9, 10, 12, what's the difference? And so as Comrade has pointed out, this man does not care about any of us, people of color, or anybody actually besides himself, to be quite honest. Everybody's expendable to him.
True.
And so this is not really about the Congolese. It is totally about how they enrich themselves.
Yep.
To the extent that Rwanda and M23 are standing in their way, they are expendable. Now, if they were working to help assist them enrich themselves more, there would be no problems. And Kagame should be very concerned. That's all I have to say on this particular article.
No, sister is absolutely correct. They don't care who you are, how close you are. At one point, we forget history very quickly. At one point, Marcos had to go when they realized clearly that Marcos had to go. Yeah, and Marcos was out. Mubarak had to go. Mubarak was out. They do that. The Shah had to go.
Gaddafi had to go. Hussein had to go. I mean,
Mubarak, Mobutu, you name it.
Yeah. For them, no permanent.
In the White House one day, in the outhouse the next day, as Malcolm would say.
Not outhouse, under the ground the next day.
So quick question.
No, sister is saying it's better to be in the outhouse.
Quick question. There's a question from the audience. It says, why is Ghana, Rwanda, and several other African countries fearful of separating from the West?
Separating from the West?
Yeah. Distangling like the AES, basically.
It comes with a cost.
Yeah.
It comes with a cost. Look what happened to Lumumba. Look what happened to Nkrumah getting deposed. That was a significant blow to Africa and African history. Look what happened to Sankara,
Let's make it very basic, because this is very common. For the same reason You're a mother who was being abused by your father, and I'm not making this personal to anybody, but we've all heard or seen the stories.
No, no, it's
For
true.
the longest time, stayed with an abusive spouse, because we know that the most dangerous time for a woman in an abusive relationship is when she's trying to leave.
Right. I love that analogy,
and
actually.
so you figure, hey, listen, let me at least try to stay alive. I know I'm getting black eyes. I know I'm getting my ribs broken, but at least I'm still alive. And so you figure out a way to make peace with your lack of peace.
Right. No, that's brilliant.
Do I agree with that? Because ultimately, we also know that the most dangerous person to a woman today, and don't argue with yourself on this, is her intimate male partner.
Right.
And so we also know that ultimately that is not the best strategy, because too many women are losing their lives at the hands of their intimate male partners. Correct. So what you see with African nations is many of our leaders thinking, oh, if I massage this relationship, if I just give them enough, if I cook their meals, if I acquiesce enough, maybe they wouldn't be so harsh towards me. Right. But at some point, we are going to have to bite the literal bullet and fight for our independence for real. Excellent. Because what we have done right now is negotiate
with the devil
alliance. Yes,
negotiate with the devil.
Not free. Yes, and so that's why we keep making these concessions, thinking that means that they will ever allow us to really thrive, and they will never allow us to thrive. Which is why I keep telling people, Black people, African people, go and read Marimba Ani's Yurugu.
I mean, I would
not negotiate with the devil.
I would also bring it home to Africa, and I'll mention a couple of names, and you could then you could then go and Google their names and understand what happened to them. About Robert Mimi, Silvio Olimpio, Modibo Keita, Amiko Cabra, Samora Machel, Thomas Sankara. I mean, that is just 6 names. Google what they wanted to do, and then ask yourself that question again. Why is it that they are so afraid? It's not that they're afraid. It's that this is what happens. It's a playbook that plays over and over again. You try as much as possible. But
that's what happens when they can isolate just one, when they can kill off a Malcolm X or a Martin Luther King. But if we were in mass, how many heads can you kill off? You're going to kill off everybody, and that's the issue. If they can keep us divided, and then it's easier to conquer us.
You said dividing. That was the speech Thomas Sankara gave July 15, 19.
Yeah, but Nkrumah gave that speech in 1963. So.
The same thing. So you begin to see, it's like he said, if we all decide to go this way, we all will come back and talk about whatever it is we've achieved. But if only I do it, I will not be here at the next meeting. 3 months later, he wasn't. Muritala Mohammed.
The original sin was not listened to Nkrumah in 1963.
Yes.
Otherwise, there would be no tragedy like Patrice Lumumba. There would be no tragedy like not Patrice. Patrice already killed. There would be no tragedy like Thomas Sankara. In 87, you see.
87. Yeah.
That was our original sin as African people.
Yeah. I enjoyed people to actually read that speech. It was May 25, 1963. Nkrumah's speech at the OAU. If people read it, you would see what the comrade is referring to. Every line in there was intentional. And the people that heard it in the room knew they were dealing with a different kind of leader. Over to you.
And I think there was some issue of egos as well. And I think Nyerere admitted to that too. Nyerere opposed Nkrumah Union now. And then...
As did Azikiwe, because you'd rather be a big fish in a small pond.
Absolutely. And Nyerere admitted to that. He came, admitted to that in a speech in the 70s in Ghana.
Yeah.
He said Nkrumah was right. He said, but then once you start getting used to being called His Excellency, your own national anthem, your own currency, your own national flag, you live in state house, it becomes much more difficult. And yet I'm glad he admitted it, meaning that he was profoundly wrong on that issue, even though I love Nyerere tremendously. I respect him even much more because he admitted that he was wrong.
It was wrong, yeah.
So I have a couple of things that I would like to bring up. First and foremost, we have a master teacher in our midst, as you all have heard me say before, and that is our comrade Milton Allimadi, who I had the immense pleasure of finally meeting in person a couple of weekends ago.
Okay.
Was it just last week?
It was last week. Yeah, it was last week.
It was just last week.
Yeah, it was last week. Yeah.
And I was trying not to fangirl. You know, I had to.
I saw both of you cheesing away.
I was just cheesing, just to show too many teeth. But some of you may recall that 2 weeks ago he gave me an assignment, and that was to set up a petition for our sister Soria Bonali to get a medal, a gold medal, from the Olympic Committee. And so please check the chat, and I will make sure that I put this on the YouTube side as well.
Thank you, sister. Thank you so much.
Please sign the petition. Please share the petition. We want to get at least 10,000 signatures on this. And the tragedies, even for the medals that she did get from the Olympics, someone broke into her home and stole those medals. And so, first of all, she should be recognized. For those of you who don't know the story, she was the one who landed a backflip on one leg after she injured her
Achilles.
It was her Achilles.
Yeah, it was Achilles.
Came back, landed it. They said it was too dangerous, and so they, gave her all of these disqualifying marks and so on and so forth. And then 2 decades later, a white man lands it, and
he's a hero.
Yes, he's a hero.
Yeah,
so the petition is right. I put the link right in the chat, but I'm also going to put it in the YouTube chat in a second here. So please sign that petition for us to get. We don't necessarily need these people to validate us. However, she more than earned that medal.
Absolutely.
She should get it.
And she deserves love from her people as well.
Yes. So that's the first thing that I wanted to bring up. The second thing I wanted to bring up is that today is March 8th, and it happens to be recognized as International Women's Day.
Right.
And some of you may recognize that this global recognition was officially celebrated in 1975 by the UN. But before the UN, March 8th became significant during World War I in 1917, when women in Petrograd, this was Russia, went on strike, demanding bread and peace. And that protest helped to spark the Russian Revolution. And soon after, women were granted voting rights in Russia. And March 8th was then adopted internationally as the official date. Okay. So supposedly today, we are looking at this being a day where we are still talking about women's rights to vote, women's rights to hold public office, fair labor conditions. Here in the United States, women still do not have the rights to equal pay for equal work. Imagine that. Of course, all around the world, we are still seeing women face really dire situations in unequal rights. Women not having protection against discrimination. We're still seeing women, young girls being sold off and being married off at very young ages. And so the struggle continues. So if there's a woman in your life, please support her. Please recognize her. Please fight for her rights, because it is something that all of us should be fighting for. And of course, join us on Wednesdays when we every Wednesday have we review the life of a woman during our Women in Resistance. And it's our way of making sure that women of African descent in particular are not erased in terms of the work that we do and have been doing and continue to do, even as we are disrespected on a daily. So wanted to share that. And in keeping, let me add one last thing. Soria Bonali happens to be a survivor and a thriver of breast cancer. And we have someone who is a member of our community. I will not mention her name, but she is frequently in the chat in our community, who is also right now battling breast cancer as well. And we have set up a GoFundMe to help with some of the expenses. We have a very horrible healthcare system in the United States of America, where someone who is employed and has health insurance still through a system of co-pays and things that the insurance won't cover, and a system that tells you, yes, you can take, FMLA, but if you don't have all the time stored up, you don't get paid while you're recuperating. So you can imagine trying to recuperate from such major surgery
with the stress.
And also having to worry about finances. So we hope that as a community, we can come together and each person do a little bit to donate to this fund so that our sister can at least have some financial peace of mind as she goes through her recovery process. And of course, we wish her health.
Do you have the link?
And recovery. Yes. So I am going to try to multitask here and very quickly post those links in the YouTube chat for everyone. I'm going to post both links if you guys will give me 30 seconds.
All right. So just one more assignment, sister.
No.
If you don't mind, do a short press release on the links. Just a short press release, and we'll post that on Black Star News, because that will also help get more traffic. Doesn't have to be long. This petition was launched to support, et cetera, et cetera. And if you want, you can actually combine both of the links in the same press release.
Okay, I can do that. And I am posting the...
Yes. Comrade, something to tickle your fancy. So women in Russia got the right to vote before women in the United States.
The power of revolutionary consciousness,
Yeah. And also the fact that, the West imperialism has a way of subjugating women. It's done that over time. If you look at all the put downs of agitation for liberation in South America, most of it impacted women to a greater extent. The women were the first that they went after in order to crush the wills of the men. And it's no small feat as to how the women were able to counter that revolution. And one thing I learned in the course of the week was the fact that the Vietnamese also trained most of the leftist liberation movement in South America. I was reading, what book was it? It was a book on South American liberation movements. And when they brought in the Vietnamese, I'm like, okay, this explains why the guerrilla tactics were similar. And then you begin to understand that they brought them to Cuba and they were trained in Cuba by the Vietnamese and then sent on their merry way. It's like, oh, okay. No wonder they wanted to get rid of Cuba. So that said,
yes, so they have been posted in the YouTube chat, both links.
Thank you very much.
Oh, by the way, really quickly, what do you think about Jamaica suddenly severing its relationship with Cuba in terms of medical training? And saying it has nothing to do with pressure from the United States of America.
Talking about cutting your nose off to spite your face.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. I mean, it's just tragic. It's tragic all the way. It's like you're starving and you're throwing out food.
Yeah, into the garbage can. It's just, that's nuts. But
Yeah.
again,
But I think obviously he got an offer he couldn't refuse. With the, remember the mafia movie when the guy woke up with the severed head of the horse next to him in bed.
That's still my favorite scene in the
That was
trilogy. You throw away 50 years of a partnership for a man who is actually, we see him rotting in real time.
Yeah, that was.
His skin
is. Tell people about that photo.
We see the makeup he's wearing. They're covering all kinds. You throw away 50 years of partnership for someone who might drop dead tomorrow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It goes to show. It goes to show that the leaders we used to have, in the case of South America, Maurice Bishop, even in Jamaica, Mr. Patterson, we don't have those kinds anymore. We don't.
No.
We don't. That said, we've come to the end of.
People are still asking for the links. I put them in the YouTube chat, and I did put them in. For those who are live, I've also put them in this live chat as well. Are you not seeing them? Because I do want to make sure that. So I'm putting the fundraising chat.
Yeah, I can see it. I can see it now. I can see it.
I just want to make sure that everybody gets what they need to get. And I'm going to put the Soria Bonali one again.
I mean, it's I suppose in trying times like this is when you discover who are true leaders, because you could just see
find out who has a spine and who doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it just goes to show. It goes to show, especially no, Gustavo Petra is a cut above the rest. Oh no, my God. That is a leader. I wish I spoke Spanish. Hey, it would be something. It would be someone I would love to have a conversation with.
So this is really interesting. I can see the links on YouTube. It's from Rethinking Freedom, but people are saying they can't see the links. Like they're literally writing after the links.
If you send it to me, then what I'll do is I'll pin it to the.
You put it in the description.
Yeah.
Okay, I can do that.
Yeah. That said,
someone says, can you go into details about why Africans didn't listen to Kwame Nkrumah? Is Africa making the same mistake today with not joining the Sahel States?
We'll probably do that next week. We'll do that next week. We'll do that next week. We'll do that next. Make a note of that, comrade, please. We'll do that.
Without a doubt.
Thank you. Yes, we've come to the end of this week's episode of African News Review. I've even forgotten the name, So it's goes to show that we're having fun. So that said, comrade, final thoughts?
Asante Sana. I look forward to next week's conversation, and we will liberate our continent. I have faith in our young people. They just need good instructions.
Yeah. Sister?
Everyone do your part.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to point to what others aren't doing and what our other leaders are not doing, but we are all leaders. And so the question is, what are you doing? That's certainly how I'm going about my life. What am I doing? That should be a
t-shirt. That should be a t-shirt. What are you doing?
Do your part. Yeah, do what are you doing? Yeah. And I will leave you with the thoughts of just saying, read a page. Just read a page a day. Just read a page. Don't read any. Just read a page.
No, make it 10. At least 10 pages. Page, you can't get anything from a page. Read at least 10.
I'm trying to be nice.
Yeah, our people need to do some work. Come on now.
You've heard it from the comrade. Read 10 pages.
That's our master teacher. And if I'm doing my assignments from him, do your assignment. 10 pages.
10 pages. Read a page. Yeah, read a page. That said, thank you all for coming through, and until next Next week, it's good night and God bless.